On a warm summer evening in July 2022, 16-year-old Susana Morales vanished without a trace in Gwinnett County, Georgia. It was a disappearance that would send shockwaves through the community, unravel a web of disturbing truths, and challenge public trust in law enforcement. This is the story of Susana Morales, a case that's as heartbreaking as it is infuriating, a case that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about power, accountability, and justice. Chapter 1. Susana Morales was the kind of teenager who lit up a room with her presence. Known for her infectious laughter, deep love for her family, and aspirations for a bright future, she was someone who embodied hope and promise. She had spent that fateful evening with a friend, texting her family updates on her plans. Around 9:40 p.m., she informed her sister she was walking home. But when she didn't arrive by 10 p.m., worry began to set in. Her family reported her missing that very night. Days turned into weeks, and despite desperate pleas and searches, Susana's whereabouts remained a mystery. The community rallied, organizing vigils and search parties. Flyers bearing her smiling face adorned every street corner. But as time dragged on, hope gave way to despair. What had happened to Susana Morales? The breakthrough came 7 months later, in February 2023. Hunters in a remote wooded area stumbled upon human remains, a grim discovery that would soon shed light on a mystery that had haunted the community for months. As the news spread, many of you joined us on this journey to uncover the truth, and we're grateful for your support. If you're new here, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to stay updated on the latest developments. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Susana Morales. Her body was found miles from where she was last seen, and the discovery raised more questions than answers. How did she end up there? And who was responsible for this heinous act? The location of her remains added to the mystery. The area was secluded, known mostly to locals or those familiar with the terrain. This suggested that whoever was responsible had gone to great lengths to ensure the body would not be easily discovered. Investigators combed the scene meticulously, gathering evidence that might shed light on the horrific crime. Initially, theories ranged from a random act of violence to something far more sinister. However, a trail of evidence soon began to point toward an unsettling suspect. This wasn't a stranger, but someone from within the community, someone whose very role was to uphold the law and ensure safety. The investigation would soon reveal a web of deceit, abuse of power, and unimaginable betrayal. Chapter 2. The case took a chilling turn when evidence pointed to someone sworn to protect and serve Miles Bryant, a former police officer with the Doraville Police Department. He wasn't just any suspect. He had a history of troubling behavior, and his position as an officer cast a dark shadow over the entire case. Chapter 3. Miles Bryant, 22 at the time, seemed like a textbook example of a young man climbing the ranks of law enforcement. On paper, he had an impressive start to his career working as a police officer with the Doraville Police Department. To the public eye, Bryant appeared to be a dutiful servant of the law. But behind the badge, a much darker story was unfolding. As investigators delved into Bryant's past, a chilling pattern of predatory behavior emerged. Multiple women had come forward with allegations against him, describing incidents of stalking and harassment. Bryant had allegedly used his position of authority to manipulate and intimidate, creating a facade of untouchability. Many of these incidents, horrifyingly, had gone unreported or unaddressed by those in power. Living near Susana Morales' neighborhood, Bryant was all too familiar with the area and its residents. Evidence began to surface that linked him to Susana's disappearance. Investigators pieced together a disturbing timeline. On the night of her disappearance, Bryant allegedly abducted Susana, assaulted her, and later disposed of her body in a remote wooded area. The methodical nature of his actions suggested planning, and his subsequent behavior, such as filing a false report about a stolen weapon, pointed to attempts at covering his tracks. The revelations about Bryant sent shockwaves through the community. How could someone with such a troubling history be entrusted with a badge and the authority it conferred? The trust that citizens placed in their law enforcement was not just shaken, it was shattered. This case would go on to highlight glaring issues within the police hiring process, sparking a wave of outrage and demands for accountability. Chapter 4. Susanna's case didn't just expose the actions of one rogue police officer, it revealed the systemic cracks within law enforcement as a whole. Miles Bryant, despite his troubling history, had been hired and entrusted with the power and responsibility of protecting the public. This horrifying lapse in judgment begged the question: how could someone with such glaring red flags slip through the system? Background checks are a cornerstone of police hiring processes, but in Bryant's case, they appeared either insufficient or ignored altogether. As more details about his past emerged, it became evident that warning signs were present long before Susanna's disappearance. Allegations of stalking and harassment had circulated, but these claims were either dismissed or overlooked. This negligence had catastrophic consequences, costing Susanna her life and shaking public faith in law enforcement. Critics argue that the hiring process often prioritizes filling vacancies over thorough vetting. In many departments, the pressure to maintain staffing levels can lead to shortcuts in background investigations, psychological evaluations, and performance reviews. This creates a culture where problematic individuals can slip through the cracks, often with devastating results. Susanna's case became a rallying cry for reform. Community members, activists, and lawmakers began pushing for stricter hiring protocols, including more comprehensive background checks and continuous monitoring of officers' behavior. The failure to act on red flags in Bryant's case served as a tragic reminder that complacency within the system could lead to irreversible harm. The fallout from the case wasn't limited to the Doraville Police Department. Nationwide, the incident sparked a broader conversation about accountability and transparency in law enforcement. It wasn't just about one officer's heinous actions, it was about the system that allowed him to operate unchecked. The need for reform became urgent. Chapter 5. The fight for justice in Susana Morales' case was both a legal battle and a community movement. For her family, it was a journey through unimaginable grief, transformed into a relentless pursuit of accountability. For the broader community, it was a wake-up call, a demand for systemic change, and a reminder that justice must be fought for at every level. As the investigation unfolded, the evidence against Miles Bryant began to mount. Forensic testing revealed connections between him and the crime scene, while his suspicious behavior in the days following Susanna's disappearance raised further red flags. For instance, Bryant reported his gun stolen the day after she went missing, a move investigators later interpreted as an attempt to cover his tracks. These pieces of evidence painted a chilling picture of premeditation and a calculated effort to evade justice. But Bryant's arrest was only the beginning. The legal process that followed was grueling, not just for Susanna's family, but for the entire community that had rallied around them. Prosecutors worked tirelessly to build an airtight case, ensuring that Bryant's actions would not go unpunished. Every court appearance drew crowds of supporters, many holding signs demanding justice for Susanna and reforms in law enforcement practices. The community's involvement didn't stop at the courthouse steps. Vigils turned into rallies, and conversations about Susanna's case sparked broader discussions about the need for police accountability. Activists and lawmakers alike began to push for legislative reforms, aiming to address the systemic failures that allowed someone like Bryant to remain in a position of power. For Susanna's family, the fight was deeply personal. They became advocates for change, speaking out about their experience and calling for stronger protections for vulnerable individuals. Their courage and determination inspired others to take action, turning their personal tragedy into a powerful force for good. In the courtroom and beyond, the fight for justice became a testament to the strength and resilience of a grieving family and a united community. Chapter 6. The aftermath of Susana Morales' tragic death rippled far beyond her immediate family. The community in Norcross, Georgia, where Susanna lived, was thrust into a collective state of mourning and reflection. Her story resonated with countless families, not just because of its horror, but because it highlighted vulnerabilities that could impact anyone. In the days following the discovery of her remains, makeshift memorials began to appear near the wooded area where her body was found. Candles, flowers, and handwritten notes from strangers painted a somber picture of grief and solidarity. Community members who had never met Susanna or her family came together to offer support, share their outrage, and demand justice. Vigils were held, each one attended by hundreds of people who shared stories, shed tears, and promised to remember Susanna's name. But mourning quickly turned into action. Local leaders and activists used the momentum to push for tangible changes, urging local government officials to strengthen oversight of law enforcement and implement programs to protect vulnerable community members. The tragedy inspired initiatives such as neighborhood safety workshops, mentoring programs for young girls, and campaigns advocating for police reform. For the Morales family, the support from the community was a source of both comfort and strength. Knowing that so many people were fighting in Susanna's name gave them the courage to continue advocating for justice. Her mother, in particular, became a poignant voice for change, reminding everyone that while nothing could bring her daughter back, they could prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Chapter 7. Susana Morales' case has left an indelible mark, not just on the community of Norcross, but on the nation as a whole. It highlighted glaring flaws in the systems meant to protect citizens, particularly in law enforcement hiring practices and oversight. But it also served as a rallying point for change, sparking conversations about justice, accountability, and safety. One of the most significant lessons from this tragedy is the importance of vigilance in ensuring the integrity of law enforcement personnel. Susanna's story revealed the dire consequences of neglecting red flags during hiring processes. Advocates for reform have called for more thorough background checks, stricter oversight, and regular evaluations of officers' conduct. The case also underscored the power of community action. The outpouring of support for Susanna's family and the collective push for systemic changes showed how a united community could drive meaningful progress. Initiatives inspired by her story, such as mentoring programs and advocacy groups, have begun to take root, offering hope for a safer future. While nothing can undo the pain of Susanna's loss, her legacy continues to inspire action. Her name has become a symbol of resilience and a reminder that justice requires both vigilance and compassion. By learning from her story, society can take steps to ensure that no family has to endure such a tragedy again. Chapter 8. One of the most troubling aspects of Susana Morales' case was the institutional failures that allowed such a tragedy to occur. Miles Bryant, the officer charged in her case, had a history that should have raised alarms. However, the systems in place failed to properly vet or monitor him, allowing him to remain in a position of power. This glaring oversight revealed a systemic issue that extends far beyond one police department. Critics argue that many institutions prioritize maintaining staffing levels over conducting rigorous evaluations of potential hires. The result is a system where warning signs are ignored, creating opportunities for abuse of power. Susana's case became a stark reminder that accountability must start at the institutional level, with policies that emphasize transparency and responsibility. Advocacy groups have since called for reforms, such as independent oversight committees to investigate misconduct and enforce stricter hiring protocols. The need for cultural change within law enforcement was also highlighted, focusing on creating an environment where unethical behavior is neither tolerated nor ignored. While change is slow, Susana's case has sparked a broader movement to hold institutions accountable. Her story has become a catalyst for action, urging both citizens and lawmakers to push for a system that prioritizes public safety over bureaucratic convenience. It's a fight that requires persistence, but one that carries the promise of a safer and more just society. Chapter 9. Susana Morales' life, though tragically cut short, has left a lasting legacy. Her story has become a powerful force for change, inspiring individuals and communities to take action. From grassroots movements to legislative efforts, the impact of her case continues to ripple outward, shaping conversations about justice and accountability. One of the most profound outcomes of Susana's case is the emphasis it has placed on community advocacy. Local organizations have launched initiatives aimed at protecting vulnerable populations and fostering trust between citizens and law enforcement. These efforts include workshops on personal safety, mentorship programs for young people, and forums that encourage open dialogue between police and the communities they serve. On a larger scale, Susana's case has influenced policy discussions at the state and national levels. Lawmakers have introduced bills aimed at increasing transparency within law enforcement agencies, improving the vetting process for officers, and establishing independent bodies to investigate misconduct. While these measures are still in progress, they represent a significant step toward addressing the systemic issues highlighted by Susanna's story. For her family, Susanna's legacy is deeply personal. They continue to advocate for change, sharing their journey to ensure that no other family has to endure such a loss. Their resilience and determination have turned their grief into a rallying cry, proving that even in the face of tragedy, hope and progress can prevail. Susanna's name has become synonymous with the fight for justice, serving as both a reminder of the work that remains and a symbol of the change that is possible. Her legacy is one of courage, compassion, and an unyielding commitment to creating a better, safer world. Chapter 10. As Susanna Morales' story draws to a close, the lessons it imparts remain vivid and urgent. Her death was not in vain. It illuminated the need for systemic reforms and galvanized a community to demand better from its institutions. Yet, the fight for justice and accountability does not end with her case. It is a continuous effort requiring the commitment of individuals, communities, and lawmakers alike. For her family, Susanna's memory is a source of strength. They have transformed their grief into advocacy, using their platform to bring awareness to the issues that led to her death. Their courage has inspired others to join the movement, amplifying their call for meaningful change. The Morales family's resilience serves as a testament to the enduring power of love and determination. Communities across the country have echoed this call, fostering a sense of unity and shared responsibility. The reforms inspired by Susanna's case have started to take root, but there is still much work to be done. True justice will only be achieved when the systems meant to protect society are held to the highest standards of transparency, fairness, and accountability. Susanna's story reminds us that every individual has the power to make a difference, whether through advocacy, education, or simply standing in solidarity with those who seek justice. Her legacy will continue to inspire future generations, serving as a beacon of hope in the fight for a safer, more just world. In remembering Susanna, we honor her life and reaffirm our commitment to building a better future. And that's the heart-wrenching story of Susanna Morales. Her tragic death has left an indelible mark, inspiring a movement for justice and accountability. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned for our next video, where we dive into another shocking tale. If you thought this story was intense, wait until you hear about a case that involves a sheriff, a scandalous affair, and a murder that will leave you questioning everything. You won't want to miss it.